Candice, welcome back to Candid Conversations.
Welcome back.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
It's been one of those weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a challenging week.
Yeah, well, we are here with another guest in the studio to have a conversation with about leadership.
We are, and let me read her bio.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Dr. Guerra Pérez. She serves as the Interim Vice Chancellor for Access, Civil Rights, and Community. She joined Illinois in 2013 as the Director of La Casa Cultural Latina and has overseen the daily operations of ACRC, which is the Access, Civil Rights, and Community, since 2018. She also has recently served as the university's undocumented student liaison as required by the state of Illinois statute. Born and raised in Panama, Dr. Guerra received her PhD in Educational Leadership and Organizational Development and Master in Sociology and Communication from the University of Louisville. Welcome, Gio.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Really looking forward to getting to know you. I've heard so much about you on campus, but we've never had a chance to meet. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this conversation.
I'm very happy
to
be here. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So, as stated in the bio, you grew up in Panama, but then you later built your career in the United States. How has your personal journey across cultures shaped the leader that you've become?
Yes, as you mentioned, I grew up in a small town in Panama, very close to the border with Costa Rica, actually 20 minutes. And my grandfather immigrated to Panama from Colombia. So at a very early age, conversations about border, about immigration, about getting excited to go to another country, which is just 20 minutes away from your house, was always part of, my growing up in Panama. And my grandmothers, they both are native of the region. So they also had that very sense of pride about being from Chiriquí, which is the province where I'm from. And another cultural experience for me that I often bring up that helped me shape who I am today, my parents, they practice different religious doctrines, right? So I experienced one parent, resting on the Sabbath, and I had another parent, that Sunday was the day of going to church. So that really helped me to grow up in a house in which there were cultural differences right there, understanding that being different was nothing wrong about that, actually enriched my experience growing up. And then I came to the U.S. As an undergraduate, international, and a Fulbright scholar. And that allowed me to get to know so many students from all around the world or all around the United States, learning about themselves, their stories, their struggles. And that, I think, have shaped who I am today because of the experiences growing up in what I could consider a multicultural type of family, and then being exposed and experienced that throughout my life. So that's, from my perspective, what helped me growing up.
So what about kind of your family, your community, your mentors really first awakened your sense of purpose around both education and advocacy?
Yes, well, my mom is a teacher, and actually she taught for 51 years. So right there can give you an example of how education shaped who I am. In terms of the advocacy, I would say also comes from my mother. Somehow I grew up in Panama in the late 70s, during the 80s. And during that time, Panama was under a military dictatorship. The regime was, maintaining control of the country. So growing up for, 15 years until 1989, we experienced fear. And that was something that was constant, because my mother was not only a teacher, very active in the school, but politically. So she will be always protesting on the streets with some of her colleagues. And at that time, teachers, nurses, construction workers, they were all on the streets protesting the regime. And at the same time, Latin America was experiencing these neo-colonial type of pressures from different powers global powers. And I think the country was trying to liberate themselves from that practice. So I grew up not only in a house in which education was a key component from my mother and my parents, but also politically very involved in what was going on in the country. And at the same time, coming from a church, a Catholic church, which its basic doctrine, and I have always talked about this, was rooted in social justice and advocacy. So that's the type of experience I had growing up. So I think that if I think about mentors, of course, I'm going to think about my mom. I'm going to think about all the people who fought during that time. So that is what I sometimes am connected with the music, because there were a lot of lyrics that represented what that struggle was. And I have talked about Mercedes Sosa, who is an Argentinian singer whose voice helped us to, walk through those struggles and keep ourselves grounded in what our role was in terms of advocate for the rights of others and the rights of ourselves as well. So I do feel that family, those mentors, help me in the work that I do today.
I want to see if my memory is serving me well. Was that the Noriega regime?
Correct.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
I remember that. Like, those of us who are Gen X kind of remember that, even in the global news. So.
Yes, and the U.S. invaded Panama December 20, 1989, and that changed the course, but at the same time impacted the soul of the country when a foreign nation invade your country, and you have to deal with that and the struggles that comes right after that. So that is my generation. I think I was around 15, 16 years old. So I remember clearly everything that happened that Christmas. There was no Christmas for us. So those type of things really shape who I am and help me to have something that holds me together in terms of when I'm doing the advocacy, is thinking about how we are able to come out of our struggles if we work together, if we work as a community, if we are knowledgeable about what are the things that we need to do in order to overcome those barriers. So I do feel that even though I might have not talked about all of those things before, as I reflect back in my life, definitely they have a huge impact on who I am today.
So it seems like education, advocacy, civil rights, civil access, is who you were meant to be. And so right now at the university, you've held multiple titles, being the director of La Casa Latina, as well as right now the Interim Vice Chancellor for Access, Civil Rights, and Community. What has been one of the most transformative challenges that you faced in any of the roles at the university?
I think there has been a lot of experiences that have transformed my understanding of what to be a leader. But I'm going to talk about, I guess, the most recent one, when I assumed the interim position, for this particular office, Office for Access, Civil Rights, and Community, formerly Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. One of the things that I have always been I have always practiced the collaborative nature of an institution like this. And sometimes you face challenges or you have to make decisions. And in a campus of 60,000 students and thousands of employees and community members, it's really hard to get consensus on certain issues. And you know that you have a group of folks who can help you to make those decisions, because you don't make decisions on your own. And that is a key element of any leader. You understand that you have a vast knowledge of an area, but you don't have it all. So you need to be surrounded by people that can help you to make those decisions. So in my office, when I knew I was going to have to go through a review, realignment, restructure, knowing that there are external and internal factors impacting the work that you do, you know that when you are going to make some of the decisions, there will be people who will be impacted more than others. And you have to live with the consequences of that. It's how you plan, how you're going to what are you going to do right after that to try to reduce the harm, to try to clearly explain certain things, because not everybody knows all the single steps you have to take to make that decision. People might know 2 or 3, while we know that it has been 20 steps in order for you to get there. But there is almost, with the time frame that we had in the office, we were not going to be able to have the 3, 4, 5 years that sometimes make a change on campus requires. So I learned through that process that I knew we were transforming something, and at the same time we wanted to preserve the work and be very candid and open and transparent on that. So from my perspective, that particular experience helped me to work with a smaller group of folks that I'm used to. Because I knew that it will require intentional and very fast-paced type of decision for me. And then learning how to face the consequences of that and how I could work on rebuilding trust for many of the people who were on our campus who might have been harmed or not were happy with the changes that we are made. And I'm still learning, I'm still working on that. But I think that you have to be trustful to yourself. I knew personally that this was going to be something that I will have to face. And, what are the steps that I'm taking is what is going to make me, I think, at the end, be a better leader and be more transformational than I was before.
I want to flip that a little bit, or actually kind of flip it on its head, because we've recently had this experience where we had a lot of federal pressure to make changes, and that had to happen really quickly. And you were just talking about how that had to happen really quickly. But generally speaking, in higher education, change happens very slowly. So can you talk about how you lead through those times when you can see the destination that you want to get to, but change happens really slowly through that? How do you navigate that as a leader?
I think that in our industry, in higher education, we know that. We are aware that change goes very slow. And so we're kind of like, we know this is going to take time. So we take it from that perspective. But at the same time, there are external pressures or internal pressures, depending on the issue, right? So the way for me to navigate this type of slow pace that higher education is about, but we have very rapid changes that we need to adapt, realign, restructure, reorganize. The most important piece is that there is work that has been done. So not forgetting about that work that has been done, right? Going back to, we already talked about wanting to review some of these. Now we are under this particular pressure. So I use some of those techniques. For example, you mentioned I'm currently the undocumented student liaison for the institution, to the state of Illinois. And during the fall semester, there was a new law that passed from the state government. We're not talking about the federal government on this one, just to give you an example. And we knew we have 6 weeks to review what we needed to change or amend or work on. But a lot of that work had been done. So it was helpful for us to review previous work. And in a very short period of time, we were able to come up with a new protocol to be ready for January 1st when the state required us to be ready for. And so from my perspective is a lot of the work, sometimes you have so many committees, you have so many work done, and then you just don't move further because of that nature of we've been very slow. So using previous work is extremely important. And at the same time, knowing that the change you are going to make at that moment is going to impact communities of students. And in this case, a community of students that has been going through a lot in the last few months due to immigration policies and immigration experience here in the state of Illinois. So for me, those two factors helped me or helped the team to move forward and tackle that issue. It became a priority. So maybe in the past we have worked on it, but it wasn't a priority. At that moment, it became a priority. So everything else have to move aside, and we have to work on this. That's how you make those decisions.
I always say never waste a crisis, right? And so some things that you've put off for a long time, a crisis, an external pressure comes in and you go, okay, we can take advantage of that. It's not ideal right now, but we can take advantage of that to make some changes that we wanted to make. Mm-hmm.
So you just mentioned about the undocumented student liaison role and how it's a unique and difficult circumstance. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've had to work with a lot of different stakeholders and how you've had to build that trust amongst a lot of different cultural groups and stakeholders and stuff? How do you do that?
The undocumented student liaison, the role of this position is to assist undocumented students or students with, coming from mixed status families. That could include students who are U.S. citizens, but their parents are not. It could include students who are legal permanent residents, but a member of their family might be a DACA recipient or might be undocumented. So the complexity of this or who these students are, it's important to understand that because they all have different set of needs depending on what they are addressing or what they are facing. So one of the things that we have done here on our campus for more than a decade now, we were just looking at a picture a few weeks ago as we were talking to the students about an event that is coming up soon to raise funds for a scholarship. I was showing students that the first campus-wide allied training that we delivered was November 2016. And we're like, oh my God, a decade ago, here we are with students. We took a picture and we posted that picture.
You should have those allies.
Yeah, exactly. So at that moment, we're like, okay, we have been doing this for a long time. And we did some previous training, but they were not this institutionalized type of training. We did it in 2013, 14, 15, but 16, we put it out there. Who wants to participate? So we just we're thinking about that. And so that first training, I can tell you that those who have attended may have been individuals who were already very knowledgeable about what our students were experiencing at that time. It was right before the elections or right after the elections in 2016. So I think that now what we have built is the reputation that what we are doing here is linked to our mission as an institution, as a land-grant institution. We are here to serve the residents of the state of Illinois. That's part of our mission. And these students are coming to our institution. The state law allows them to enroll in our institutions. The state law allows them to receive state financial aid. So from my perspective is that I have to educate the campus in the way that you understand that this is part of who we are. This is our mission. We are not here checking if you are an international student, a domestic, or you're from New York, or you're from, you have document or not. That's not our role. Our role is to serve the students. So that has helped us to create a consensus that as state employees and as administrators, as a civil service employees, we're here to support the students. So giving you information about how to better support them, it's nothing wrong. Actually, it enhances that sense of belonging that we want for all students. Right? So from my perspective, that is what we have been building here, educating our campus communities on the needs, on the resources are needed. How can we make sure that every single student feel included? That's part of our mission. And we're going to help. Why? How? We're going to work on protocols. We're going to work on looking at policies. We're going to try to reduce barriers for those students the same way we reduce barriers for first-generation students, for international students, for students coming from rural towns, for students coming as veterans. So it's how we do it. And I think that creating that understanding has helped us to go across campus and educate the campus on this issue.
It's really obvious to me that like this work comes from your heart, right? That it's, and this work is also emotionally heavy. And so I wonder, how do you, especially maybe in the last 18 months or so, it's been particularly emotionally heavy. How do you balance that with just this need to stay grounded and effective and just like keep on going when it just feels like everything keeps coming and hitting you with it?
We are a small team at the Office for Access, Civil Rights, and Community. We are a small team, but the nature of our work and the nature of everyone's work, but currently, because of what we are experiencing in terms of federal landscape, state laws, and all these rapid changes in higher education, I think that what keeps me grounded is that I work with a group of colleagues who all care so much about this. So I'm not the only one carrying that worriness or that fear, and as we experience that together, and we come from so many different backgrounds and experiences, we are able to discuss how we are going to address this issue. So that is important for me. The other, and I think that the other component of having a community in your workspace that understand why there is the urgency to do something right now, because this particular group or this particular, it's either students or employees, because we also serve employees through our office, is discussing what are the priorities, how can we help. The other piece is when students come and talk to us and they share what their struggles are, and we have been doing that for so many years, we know that many of the work that we have done have helped them, now alums, to know where they are. Like I have students who are getting their PhD on May the 15th. They are going to be hooded on the May the 14th. And I met those students when I arrived here in 2013. That is what really is worth every single hour or minute that we spend doing the work that we are required to do. I have students who came here and didn't find that sense of belonging with some offices, not because I think that offices may have not been prepared, and that's how I see this work. I am not going to start my conversations with colleagues thinking that they are a bad person or anything like that. Is sometimes I want to explain to you why we need to do things a little bit different, right? So I have students who have experienced really difficult situations as they arrive here. And they have been sent to, many years ago, they were sent to La Casa. And I'm sure they still continue being sent to La Casa or the Cultural Center, or, you send them to where you think they belong, which is an interesting piece. But that also help us to, as administrators, to see, well, maybe we need to do something a little bit different. Not all Latino students have to go to La Casa. They might not even want to step a foot on La Casa. I don't know. When I was director of La Casa, they might feel better at the Jeffrey Center. They might feel more connected to the Geese College of Business. They have been connected with an RSO or a fraternity or sorority. I don't know. So every space has to be very welcoming and so forth. So I think that once you work that out, and then 4 or 5 years later, or 10 years later, they are appointed as a judge in a circuit in Chicago, or they are finishing up their doctorate, or they are doing great work in the schools where they are teaching right now. That type of experience is what really inspires you right now, because you know that if we receive one student today, in 5 or 7 years, that student might be where we want them to see.
Yeah, we get to draw that line to the impact that you're having.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So you've kind of answered what kind of gives you hope right now in higher ed a bit. So I'm going to shift, and I want to ask, for the teams that you lead, how do you model well-being and boundaries for those people that you lead on your teams?
I feel that we are all different, and we all have different ways to recharge or rebalance ourselves. I think that modeling authenticity and modeling that there are moments in which it's funny, sometimes I say, I'm going to get fired. I say those things sometimes in the office just to make fun. Like, Gio! They talk to me and say, no, everything is going to be fine. So that you also have moments of weaknesses, or that you struggle with certain things, so you show your human part, because that's very real. That is one way for me to model, what is to be in this position. So they might have those moments as well, and they don't have to hide those moments. They can just, either release it by sharing it, or just to taking it in their own way of doing their own reflection or their own balance, and respecting that. Right? It's a very challenging work that we do. Sometimes we feel that people are not happy with the outcome, and but we have to continue to do the work based on what either policies or the law and tells off, because for the greater good, we want to make sure that we protect the work that we do, and at the same time, we continue delivering to all the students. So I think that it's a hard time right now, but I do feel that we have cultivated that understanding that there are moments that you need to maybe take half day, or there are moments that you might want to run the 5K. There are people who are going to run the 5K this year. So there are others who, in the office, for example, during the NCAA, the March Madness, there was everybody turning their brackets and people getting updates like, how many points you have and how I'm doing. So those type of things. For the Chinese New Year, we had a celebration as well. So we celebrate all sorts of events in the office as well. I don't organize them, but there are people who take it very seriously and they organize them. And I welcome that, because that also creates within the office some sort of balance, and help us a little bit.
That makes me wonder, what is from your perspective, what does inclusion look like on the ground? Because I think inclusion is one of those words now that is politically charged, for sure. But I think a lot of people misunderstand what it actually is. So to you, what is, in a campus community, what does inclusion really look like in the everyday lives of faculty, staff, and students?
From my perspective, I'm going to speak now from my perspective, and then I will probably turn a little bit about how inclusion should look like in the campus environment. Inclusion is something really difficult to achieve, unfortunately. And people say, oh, wow, we are a campus of 60,000 students and thousands of employees, visitors, parents, community members. We all, as I have shared here, I have my own experience growing up. I have my own understanding what sense of belonging means. I have my own understanding of what, dealing with circumstances or situations of my own, and how I face them. And all other 60,000 students here will have the same. So I think that from my perspective, I have to understand as one of the leaders on our campus who do this work is that inclusion is very hard to achieve because everyone bring his her or their own backpack. And what is inside that backpack, I don't know. So sometimes that backpack could be really heavy. So how do I help that individual to carry that without knowing what is inside that backpack? And there might be backpacks that are very empty. And it's empty not because they don't have a lot of things carrying with them. It's just because maybe they don't know how to carry all the struggles. And while they are here, they might be putting those things in the backpack. And we have to figure that out. The other piece is that we live in a very complex society globally. We are one of the campuses in the United States with the largest number of international students. As I have traveled so many countries from where all our students are, cultures are different. I was just coming down here from my office, which is like, 2 blocks. And I heard people speaking Chinese, Korean, Polish, Spanish, and Portuguese. And actually, I had that in my mind entering, saying like, I probably mentioned that because this is so fantastic. They all come from different backgrounds, perspective, cultural, racial, religious backgrounds. So having everybody accept everyone, it's going to be difficult because in theory, a lot of that requires you to be acceptable of everything. And that's what inclusion fully means in theory. You accept people's points of view, you respect them, you tolerate, but there are going to be moments in which your points of view are going to conflict with my understanding of my worldview. So for that reason, I might not want your point of view to be out there. So it is difficult. And so accepting that is difficult then helps you. Now I'm going to on the professional part of my answer is that understanding that is difficult, you also have to understand that I might feel welcome in some spaces on campus. And for me, that could be enough. For others might find, a student told me one day, the best place for me on campus is the underground library. The ones that is no longer library. And I'm like, oh, really? She's like, I am so sad. I don't want to be here. I'm like, oh my God. And so I was like, what about if I make a space for you here? And, the student's like, yeah, I can come here all the time, Gio, but that was my place, and suddenly it's not there anymore. How can I make sure that we create other spaces for the students? So inclusion, from my perspective, now more on the campus-wide, is that there are offices, there are people, there are organizations, there are agencies where students feel that they belong. Because sometimes they might not feel that they belong everywhere. That is our aspiration. So as a professional here, I have to understand that we aspire to that. So there is always work for that, but also understanding that that is a very difficult thing to accomplish. If I don't have those 2 things in place, I'm going to fail as a leader and as a person. And I can tell you that I have 2 kids here who are juniors in college. So I understand that. So as long as we work towards that aspiration, I think that our work continues to be useful and important.
Thank you for that. That was it might have been the most articulate description of inclusion that I've ever heard. So thank you for that.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to know what advice you might offer to leaders that want to serve with authenticity, courage, and cultural humility. So someone that wants to go into a role similar to in this field, what advice do you have for them?
My advice will be, I think that cultural humility is one of the key elements that you have to have, because that helps you to self-reflect. that also helps you to be open. As I mentioned, you come from, you construct your own understanding of the world based on your experiences and your views. So I think that understanding that others might have different ones, so you're going to have to listen to them. So I think and have the courage of being open that I'm, in this particular role that I have right now, I have been working on the campus climate and the facilitation, engagement, understanding the culture, helping the campus, and always connected to the civil rights landscape and applicability on our campus. But I have never been so into overseeing that area. So going into that area, I told the team, and particularly those who have been leading that work, I need you all. I'm going to have to make decisions. And I will make decisions based in what you tell me. I need you to be, in the next few months, 100% here. And I know that's going to be difficult. And I need your expertise. I am not a lawyer. I am not an expert on all the pieces of the civil rights. I understand the education. I understand the supportive measures. I understand prevention work. But the compliance piece of the civil rights, I am not that knowledgeable. And I have to be honest with me. Well, that was a year ago. I can tell you that right now, I have read every single civil rights, article out there. So that is cultural humility. You all know more than I do. And I'm your leader. But you know more than I do. So you need to help me. So that was one of the things that if I can share with a leader, it's that. You know a lot in your area, but there are people out there that know more than you. Be humble and get that. Because if you feel that you are the ones who knows everything, you're going to fail. And for me, that is the advice that I'll give leaders.
Fantastic advice. So we always wrap up with a question, and it's in the spirit of this idea of candid conversations. What's one thing that most people don't know about you that you're comfortable sharing today?
I think that was the last question, and I'm wondering, one thing that I'm sharing, that I'm comfortable sharing. I think that Candice knows this one, but I'm a fan of K-drama and K-pop. So that's one thing that people might not know, but people in my office, they do, and my close friends, they do. But I watch K-drama every night, I think, for the last 15 years.
So you two are like kindred souls.
Please
then.
Share, please share the most recent K-drama you watched.
Well, the most recent K-drama I watched was Boyfriend on Demand.
Oh, yes, I just finished that one. Yeah.
It's amazing. I just watched that one because one of my favorite singers and actresses was there. So I actually watched that with my husband and my daughter. So now I have added a few more folks from my family to do that.
I have to test on how serious you are with this. Do you actually travel to Korea to go to concerts?
The last time we were at the airport, we were going back and forth.
The last time we were at the airport, we were both going to Korea. And I'm going to Korea this summer again. And unfortunately, I'm going to be in Seoul on June 13 and 14. But there is a BTS concert in Busan. And I told Martha, a colleague, I shared with her, oh my God, I'm actually, if I have time, I'll take the train to go to Busan to watch BTS. This is how crazy we are. So most people might know now, but that is something that I don't think that a lot of people.
So viewers and listeners, I might be sitting here with the two biggest K-pop fans at the University of Illinois.
There are some others. I can tell you, this campus has a lot of colleagues that are just like me. I can tell you that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a great conversation. I learned so much today about you and about the work that you're doing. Really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.
All right, thank you very much.